All right, let's get started. As you heard in Nick's keynote yesterday, the path to becoming model-driven requires very close collaboration between IT and the business teams. And in our theme of driving breakthroughs and innovations, there's no greater impact on data science than in the fight for better human health. I'm excited to introduce our next speaker. We'll speak about this critical mission that he and his organization are driving. He's a visionary IT leader with 30 years of experience helping companies excel in the digital space, including serving as CIO and head of digital transformation at Bayer, the CIO of Monsanto, VP IT at Merck as well. Today, he's the executive vice president and enterprise CEO of Johnson & Johnson, leading a global organization in more than 75 countries to accelerate the digital health ecosystem. Please join me in welcoming Jim Swanson for a fireside chat with Nick Elprin.
Hey, Nick. Good to see you.
For anyone who's thinking about taking a break early, you shouldn't. You'd be making a mistake. Jim is a visionary. Jim, thank you so much for being here. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new and insightful, and I know the audience is going to get a ton out of this. So I want to ask you a couple questions to sort of set the stage for us, and then I'm hoping to get into some details about culture and organization and kind of some of the concrete and practical takeaways these folks can have as they go try to do what you've done. So to set the stage, tell us about the mission of Johnson & Johnson and how technology and data science are part of that mission.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here. So J&J, if I start with the mission, at the highest level, it's about transforming the trajectory of health for humanity. We have huge goals around transforming healthcare. God knows it needs it, and there's so many opportunities to do it. And just if you don't know J&J, we have three big sectors. We have our consumer health business, so think Tylenol, Motrin, oral care like Listerine, skin care like Aveeno and Neutrogena. We have our pharmaceutical business in a number of therapeutic areas, oncology, inflammation, cardiovascular, infectious diseases. And we have our med tech sector in orthopedics, in vision care, in general surgery. And so a wide range of areas of focus for us. And if we think about how technology and data science plays a role in that, our CEO announced, he just did a Bloomberg article, and he talked about the fact that the next decade is going to be more transformative in healthcare than the last 100 years. And he's anchored that on three things: science, technology, which includes data science, and using our scale for good to transform healthcare, which is really people. So it's integrated into our mission. It's part of our core of how we're going to transform. If we look at how healthcare is administered today and how much it's advancing, even through this awful pandemic, it has transformed tremendously, but there's so much more opportunity. So we're embedding data science and technology in the core of our business to drive that mission.
Fantastic, and thanks for all the work that you and your organization are doing. So translate that down a level for me. Tell us a little bit about your role and how are data science and technology organized within the broader organization of J&J, and what are some of your reflections on the way that organizational design and structure has helped or hindered progress?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my responsibilities at J&J, so I'm the enterprise CIO, responsibility for all the technology across the company. I have sector CIOs in each one of those sectors, a head of supply chain, head of pharma, med tech, consumer health. I have a great CTO, so think cloud, infrastructure, a great CISO, et cetera. I also have data scientists in my organization. But we purposely designed data science in a hybrid model, and I've done this in a couple of companies I've been in, and I do really believe it's the best model, where you have some core data scientists in the core, like my organization, but you also distribute out data scientists into different parts of the business, and they become what we call bilingual. They're data science experts, but they're also domain experts in the areas of science if you're in R&D, in the areas of supply chain and logistics if you're in supply chain, in the areas of finance if you're in the financial area, or in the domain of, let's say, med tech and understanding procedures. So if we create bilingual data scientists, what that does, it actually empowers the coupling of the data science capability with the domain expertise you need to solve extraordinary problems. And the way we do the hybrid models, we've actually created a data science center of excellence, or COE, That is actually co-sponsored by myself and one of my other executive committee partners, Matai Mammon, who's our head of pharma R&D. Together, we have the responsibility, not in our domain, but across the enterprise. How do we grow data science across Johnson & Johnson? As we bring that council together, it's actually chaired, it's a rotating chair, by data scientist leads that run major parts of our data science functions across J&J, and then it's represented by all the data science leads in those areas. And that council has responsibility for three things. One, how do we continue to modernize the technology and data availability for the data scientists to do their work? Second, how do we continue to mature the talent and the capabilities and the maturity of the asset and the science for J&J? And then third, are we working on the right things? Do we have the right portfolio work solving the most difficult problems, and we get to learn and build from each other? That council becomes the amplifier and the way we grow, and then we embed data scientists in different parts of our business so we can educate our business colleagues on how to leverage it and take maximum advantage of it.
That's amazing. And the question of sort of hybrid, embedded, federated, it's one of the most common questions I hear when I talk to data science leaders. I think everyone's trying to figure that out. Because you've done it a few different places, is there, does your advice on how to do that change on the size of the organization or where they are in their maturation journey? Is there a way to start and then a point at which you get to a scale where a COE is necessary? Or what's the right point to move to the COE model?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It really is. And it's less about size of companies, because I've been in $15 billion companies and $50 billion companies. J&J is a $100 billion company. We have 144,000 employees. We're in 80, 90 countries around the world. And we sell in probably over 150. I look at the maturity of where the company's at. And so if you're really just starting, you need a kernel. You need a core to start, a central way to kind of build the capability, build the understanding. And that kernel starts to be that puts the seeds in the ground. And part of my background was agriculture, so forgive the metaphors for growing seeds and plants. It's also part of the experience I've had. But you need that core, because if you just put one data scientist in finance or one in HR or one in R&D, there's not enough critical mass. And they're kind of lost, and there's not a community for them to work in. So you start with that core, but as you start to mature it, you should purposely start to distribute it. Put it in areas where you're seeing success, and I always look for promoters. The unfortunate rule of my experience is for every one promoter you have in the organization, there's 9 detractors. So if you work with the detractors, you never scale it. You find the promoters that can amplify. And as they amplify, we saw great success in helping us understand molecules and a better insight to our pipeline. Wow, I want some of that. How do we do that? And so then you start to build it. And J&J's on that journey as well. We're not done by any stretch, but we've seen areas where we created the core. A lot of data science actually started in my organization, and we started to distribute it out. And my people went to R&D. They went to pharma, or they went to supply chain, and now they're building those out. And so look at where you are in your journey, and then go to that. I'm not a big fan of just complete decentralization. The reason why is you don't get the economies of scale to learn from each other. If you're a data scientist, you want to talk to other data scientists. You want to learn in a fully decentralized model. They don't have a community. I think community matters, whether it's a COE or a hardline structure, whatever works with your company, but I think the maturity is the most important thing you should ask. And then how do I grow it from centralization to hybrid, embedded, and then with there, you're going to continue to amplify and grow.
That's great. I want to come back in a minute to some more about sort of culture and organization, but first to just make a little more concrete for the group some of the mission you talked about. Tell us about a couple of the projects or work that J&J has done with data science that you're most proud of, or that have had some of the most exciting impacts on global health.
Yeah, how long do we have? There's so many across so many spectrums, and I'll just give you a few examples. Let's say consumer health. We have a skincare 360 application that takes AI. You can take a picture of your face, and immediately it recognizes the face complexion, and it can tie it to one of our skincare brands that best suits your particular skin complexion. If that's what we did with that app, that would be kind of cool, but that's not enough. We can actually take that data as we look at skin complexions around the world. Do we have the right formulation of that product that best supports that consumer? And with that formulation data, we can then take that in supply chain and say, I can get the right product at the right time. And I can now take that information, put it in a commercial. How do I make sure I have the right product that I'm marketing to the right consumer in the right place? So one example of just having a really cool AI-enabled app, you can actually embed it in your full data lifecycle. If I think about pharmaceuticals, we're actually using data science to better align potential patients to therapies in our clinical trials all around the world. And so that allows us to get innovative medicines to patients that need it in a much faster way, better aligning patient enrollment to those clinical trials. If I think about medtech, we're doing a ton with augmented reality, and we're tying augmented reality with image analytics and data science to help better train a physician. We've actually have data where we can train a physician in an orthopedic procedure 87% times faster with the coupling of augmented reality and data science based on how they learn. And then if I think about other interesting areas like cyber, looking at early detection of threats. And one other cool thing we just did recently, I just did it for all of my 5,000 employees in my organization. We used inference engines and AI to map skills to people's competencies. I have a heat map now of 5,000 employees against 40 skills that we inferred through AI around where they are in those skills and maturity. And why that's so valuable, I can now create learning journeys, career plans, which we are doing, what we call marketplace gigs to take my really good experts in whether it be in AI, whether it be software engineering, whether it be data engineering, and map those skills and train it. We did 19,000 hours of training in 1 month, tied to a skills inference AI model, and we're constantly updating it. And so we're changing not only how we think about talent, which is the most important thing, I'm actually taking it across J&J now. We're kind of the canary in the coal mine. If I can do it in JJT, which is the technology organization, I can do it in pharma, I can do consumer health, I can do it in HR. And I partnered with my HR colleague, the CHRO for J&J, and we're doing it together. So tremendous impact, and I can go on and on of all the examples, but I'll just stop there. But really excited about how it's getting penetrating, but it's turning to real value.
Well, I love that, that those examples span across both kind of obviously therapies and treatments to improve patient health and outcomes, but also your own internal operational efficiency. And you talked about supply chain and commercial and even HR. I think it's just it's an incredible example of sort of weaving data science into the whole fabric of the business. I want to pick up on the way you closed off your last answer. You talked about creating business value, and that's something I've heard you speak about before. That's something we've been talking a lot about over the last couple days here. What are some practical pieces of advice and tips and methods you've found for creating connection between data science and business impact and business value?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most important things, and it's not that difficult. First, I'll start with our IT strategy. Our IT strategy has 3 pillars. 1, accelerating business outcomes, or otherwise, why are we here? Second is modernizing our tech ecosystem, so we have modern technology to enable all the great science and all the great capabilities like data science for the company. Third is building the digital acumen of 144,000 employees. Because when they understand how they can, when they're more comfortable around technology, digital, they're more inclined to use it and reimagine their business. But on the business outcomes question, why I think it's actually simple is I tie my outcomes to what my business colleagues care about. If they care about net promoter score of their brands in the consumer space, well, I tie my data science or capabilities to that. If they care about net present value of the pipeline, are we using technology, digital data science to elevate the NPV of that pipeline? Because we're taking AI and we're actually looking at better molecules as a result of simulation that could accelerate our ability to bring innovative medicines to the marketplace. If I'm in supply chain and they are caring about cost of goods and they want to make sure on time, first time for every product, I tie to that. Because it's their things they care about, and now I couple technology, data science to enable that. And when they see extraordinary impact to the measures they care about, we get a huge uptake. I can't fill enough data scientists to fill the appetite now because they see that correlation. But it also comes to building the digital acumen, making them comfortable. And I loved both Cassie and Cass's discussion today. And there's so much you can apply to what they talked about. But you tie it to those outcomes. And then you also got to understand there's a way of working. You know, I always say the model's never right the first time. It's not the model itself. It could be the data you have. It could be the assumptions you have. How do you build a continual learning company and environment that you're constantly iterating and evolving, but tie it to those outcomes, measure it? You know, we have a goal of $500 million of value in data science. I did a 3-year goal and $500 million in intelligent automation. So $1 billion, but they're actually starting to merge. And we're outpacing that. You know, we're in year 2 of it, and we're already about $600 or $700 million combined. And so now I'm being asked, well, you soft pedaled it. You should have gone bigger. But it's those type of ways that are really easy to do, and now you're tied to their outcomes, and they need you when you do that.
Yeah. So I love this idea of aligning data science goals with business goals as a way to create that culture of connection to business value and support from the broader organization, and probably even motivation for the data science team. When it comes to measurement of data science efficacy or data science maturity, tell me a little more how you think about that. And the wrinkle or the kind of the rub that I've seen is, business outcomes can be delayed from data science impact, and they can also be overdetermined. And so, in theory, ideally, we'd say, data science is graded on business impact. But how do you think about just the maturity or the efficacy of data science when they can't necessarily control everything that gets all the way to business impact?
Yeah, so it's really a great question. I actually measure in 3 ways. I have what I call installation measures. Did we install a technology, a model, a data environment? That always gets a small clap from me. My organization always wants to do a big clap. I'm like, well, nobody really cares. We care we install, but nobody else cares. The second measure is adoption. You installed something. Is anybody on the planet using it? If nobody's using it, what good was the installation? So you can measure adoption. You can measure models, how many of those models are being used in practice. And the third measure is outcomes. So if I see an installation that went well, if I see a high adoption rate, it starts to give me the signals I need, because outcomes take time, to Nick's really good point. But we always know what the outcome is, the OKR, the objective, and then the key results. We're really clear on what those are. And I always ask the question, what's the problem to be solved? If we can't answer that question, why do the model? And if nobody cares about the question, why do the model? And so you have those 3 measures you can actually measure. The second thing is I look at maturity. We actually measure this around how many of our models are reactive, how many are descriptive, how many are predictive, how many are prescriptive, predictive or prescriptive. So why did it happen, what's going to happen, what do I want to happen? And we measure that so we can actually look at the maturity of those models over time. But the way I challenge this with my business colleagues is I ask them to ask 2 questions. Somebody presents an opportunity in front of them. If they just ask these 2 things. First question, what data did you use to come up with that recommendation? Because it starts to get to think, I need data to make sure I got a full view of a recommendation. The second question I ask them to ask, is what model do you use to test your hypothesis? All of a sudden, every executive you have in your company is now your biggest data science advocate, even though they may know nothing about data science. They're going to create a cascade in the whole organization. I better know before I go talk to the CEO what data I used, and I better have talked to the data science team or what model should I apply to test my hypothesis is accurate. You start to change the model, the mindset. And then you also look at, we just did a maturity analysis with the Data Science Council. We looked at a whole bunch of different factors. We looked at, is the technology there to support you? Do you have access to the data that you need? Do you understand the privacy regulations around using it? Do you have the right talent? Are we actually attracting and retaining the kind of talent that we need, or are we losing them? You know, I probably can't pay what Cassie's paying at Google, but I can outcompete on mission. I can outcompete on mission. So I go for that. And then I tie that with, I got great data that's trying to solve really, really big problems. Are you interested in that? And you're going to learn. I can do that. What actually came out of our last study was change management. That was the lowest score around how do we create change management across the enterprise to make it not a fear factor, but something that the company's going to embrace. So we start working on that. So we look at all these different factors together, and we look at maturity. It's broad. And I use my data science council with my co-executive sponsor to ask them, you guys are the experts. What do we need to do to mature, to enable? What are you looking for? And how do we attract, retain, and develop? And all of a sudden, they own it. They're part of the solution. It's not being done to them, it's being done with them, so we can educate 144,000 employees the power of this amazing capability.
Right. So one follow-up on this idea of measuring data science maturity. Is there a metric you use? Like to boil something down and obviously oversimplify, what should people be measuring?
In a very simple way, it's how many of your business decisions are informed by models. Ask yourself that question. We make business decisions every single day. I do it in technology, my counterparts in the worldwide chairs, in pharma, medtech, in consumer health, finance, our CFO, our CEO makes a decision every single day, hundreds of them. How many of them are formed by models? All of a sudden, there again, you start to change the mindset immediately. And even though it takes a journey, even though it takes time and iterations, those simple questions could change your culture. It can embrace it, especially when you show that we're learning. You create something that we built into our digital acumen agenda in my strategy. It's how do you inform people about ways of working? There's the technical skills they need to know. There's what I call the soft skills, ways of working, agile, continual learning. And then there's the leadership skills we're trying to educate. As a leader of these teams, what you'd expect. We're AAA, everything's got to be right the first time. That's not the real world we're in. There's too much uncertainty. How do leaders show up to encourage this learning mindset, continual evolution, continual product teams, diverse teams that come together? Here's the other trick to this. I don't care how smart you are as a data scientist. You cannot solve it on your own. You need a diverse team around you. You need a diverse team of business leaders. And we created high-performing teams. We've got a data scientist, a UX, user experience designer, a business owner, a product owner, a software developer, a finance person, a commercially, whatever you need to solve that problem. It's that diverse team that's high-performing that makes the difference because you're learning together, you're evolving together, and the outcome, you all have the same one. The same OKR that everybody shares, that everybody wins or loses on that changes the dynamic in the game around the impact you can have individually, team-wise, together, and for the benefit of your company. It's game-changing.
That's great. So it's a good segue to, I think, one more question I want to ask you, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. When you were talking about culture, one of the things that occurred to me is, J&J is historically a very science-driven organization, so you've been doing research in a sense for a long time, and data science is just another kind of research in some ways. What are some of the organizational lessons learned or the elements of the organizational DNA from that science background that have informed or maybe given you an advantage or driven aspects of your data science culture or data science processes? What are your reflections on kind of science versus data science in the historical context of J&J?
It's a great context. First, I start with what I call the power of and. And so we have this framework when we talk about, we're anchored first in our credo. Let me start there. Our credo drives every decision. It starts with patients and healthcare professionals that we serve. That's our number one priority. If we're not supporting them every single day, every decision starts with them. And then we have our employees. How are we taking care of our employees? How are we developing our employees and making sure they have a safe and a great place to work? Our third is our communities. We serve the communities that we're in. If we do those three things really well, then shareholders get a fair return. That really drives our framework of decision. Second, I introduced what I call the and strategy. So we have in the core of how we think about science, what we call heart. It's a lot of passion in what we do. Ingenuity, bringing innovation to the table. And people. We can't do anything without people. And I added to it digital. And digital includes technology, includes data science, includes data. And so don't make it something on the side. Incorporate it into the core ethos of your company. And that was kind of the underpinning the and strategy. Now to get to the R&D side of it, what's always cool, and I've been in science and IP-based companies my whole life. And I love it. I have a science degree and a computer science graduate degree, and I love putting those things together. This convergence of science and technology, I get a lot of passion about it. What's cool about being in a science-based company or an IP-based company, if you don't continually innovate, you don't exist. That's just the brutal fact. You got to refresh your pipeline in pharma every 10 to 15 years. You always have competitors in medtech thinking about new technologies they're introducing in the OR or other procedures. In consumer health, a lot of that science-based, you got to continually innovate. So there is an energy around innovative IP-based companies that exist. And so that creates a culture in those companies of constantly testing and learning and evolving and challenging the status quo, which is a great place to be. But we're also a big company, so we can fall into traps just as easily as anybody. Get complacent. Well, we're doing really good right now, and we don't need to continue to innovate. No, we got to remind ourselves to continually innovate. So that creates a unique culture that you can build on, and you can interact, you can test, you can learn. I'm always testing with technology and different approaches to data and data science and models. And it's a great incubator for that, but if you never scale it, you never get the maturity of it. So you got to also think about just great experiments. It's tied to an hypothesis, which is very science-driven. It's tied to testing and learning, but you got to get it in production. You got to get it to scale. You got to get it to be leveraged. Otherwise, you haven't been successful. So it's kind of that culture in whether it be agriculture or pharmaceuticals and multiple companies I've been in, and I've lived all around the world, where that exists across all those. So I hope you can build that in your companies because it's really exciting when you have it.
It's great. Well, I could spend hours here, but I do want to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. So let's take, we got time for a few questions.
So, hey, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights. So earlier we heard a little bit about our natural cognitive bias in all of us, and I'm curious to hear you use machine learning to help guide your employees to their career paths, correct? So.
Yeah, we built it from a skills, so we understand their skills, and every employee got a heat map of their skills. And that became great data then for them to then say, what's my career path look like, and how do I develop it?
Okay, so my question is, have you spoken to those employees and seen their reaction to having that data used to kind of nudge them in the direction? Has it been a positive for them, or has it taken some time?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I was going through this with my HR lead, her name's Juliana Nunes, she's awesome. We're like, what's the downsides of this? Well, one of the downsides, if I use it punitively, if I look at that map and say, oh, this person doesn't have the skill, well, should they still be working here? You'll never get adoption. So I blinded it. I don't see down to an individual level. They see it. And the way we did it was kind of cool. We used de-identified data externally around core skills, software engineering, data science, data engineering, that we were able to get. We took that data, and then we coupled that in our model with JIRA data, if you were a developer. Workday is our HR platform, so CVs are in there. Other data sets, and we combined that. And then we were able to infer for an individual, based on 40 skill sets that we mapped, this was their skill and the maturity. So we declared the skills we were looking for, which is actually really important to do, because you want your organization to know what do you value. And then they got that data. Then they were able to self-assess. Is this data right or not? Now, my joke about self-assessment is when you go to your physical and your doctor, and the question comes up, how much alcohol do you drink a week? Nobody gives an honest answer. So self-assessment is something that's important, but they can then see, what do the AI models say? What do they say? And then the third leg of that was their manager. What does the manager say about this? So you got a triangulation of 3 different sources, the AI model, their own assessment, and their manager says, now they got a pretty good data set. And then we came back to them, was the data correlated? We had an 85% correlation rate of the individual person saying it was correlated. But we said we were not going to use punitive. We're going to use it to build our training plans. We have Udacity, we got Pluralsight. The big trainings are in product management, in data science, in data engineering, software engineering, all the skills that I want to build. And so it created a really positive reinforcement. We just did another round of it. And I have folks in Europe, and yes, we got it through GDPR. So anybody said you can't do regulations, we did it. And we did it in a compliant way. And we did it with our employee support because we set the framework up front about we wanted to use it for good and help develop and be the best we can be for the organization going forward. It's a great question, really great question.
Hi. Hey, thank you so much. I was wondering, you mentioned that you did so much digital training throughout your whole company. I was wondering, what are you literally teaching people? What do they not know?
So it's interesting. You got to look at by sector. So let's say we're in med tech. I want to train the med tech organization what you can do with IoT. Because you think about what we're doing in an OR, where we actually have things like endocutters, we have digital surgery robotics. We want to be able to pull that data. How is the surgery performing so they can constantly innovate on those capabilities, but also we look pre-op and post-op. Can we improve a patient outcome? So IoT, although they're not going to code in it, but that would be an example of being very targeted. When I look at pharma, we're doing a lot of data science. We're training them, how do you think about data science and apply that in enrollment, in pipeline discovery, in adverse event reporting. We're doing a lot with intelligent automation across the company, because if we could drive more efficiencies, we unlock our knowledge workers. We hire knowledge workers. We hire PhD scientists, PhD mathematicians, incredible commercial R&D people. We want to use automation to get them out of transactions and enable the future. So we have what I call the technical area, and it depends on segment or sector, and data science is one of those curriculums we train 600 leaders on across the company. But then we're really specific in certain areas. The soft skills, we're training them on product methodology, how to build a product team. We're training them on Agile. We're training them on Scrum. We're training on ways of working. We do something called rapid value realization. And then the leadership skills. We're training them how do you attract, retain, encourage product-based teams as a leader to encourage continual learning and evolution. So we have 3 segments. And we actually, I'm doing an update to our executive committee. I did this pitch a year ago. We're doing an update this year, and we've made tremendous progress across all 3 of our segments, across our corporate entities. And the other thing I said is this is not an enterprise push. We'll make it a sector pull. We understand their business, what do they need, and we're also kind of guiding them. You know, so our pharma folks said, I don't need the skills inference. I just need to know how to retain and attract this great talent. Great. Well, this is how you do it. They're going to come around with skills inference. They're just not there yet. Whereas med tech, we need both skills and we need this attract. And so they're at different places, and that's okay. We're going to get them where they are and then grow it together. But we've got a huge uptick, and I've been really pleased in a year what we've been able to accomplish. And there's a lot more we need to do, but we're in the right direction. Great question.
Fabulous. Jim, thanks so much. It's always inspiring to hear both what you're doing inside the organization and also the impact it's having outside the organization.
And thanks, Nick. Domino is a core asset for us, and it's part of that tech ecosystem for data scientists that they love, so thanks for building that product. Continue to build it.
You're a great partner. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Jim and Nick. At this point, 3 quick things. We have our breakout session starting in a couple minutes. Definitely join that. Cassie will be here for a meet and greet right outside the Rev 3 sign on floor 6, so definitely spend some time with Cassie. And we'll see you all back here at 2:30 for our closing keynote with James Clear. Thanks, and see you all soon.